The convoy tears through the desert outside Sirte, 75 vehicles racing against time, against history. Inside one of them, Muammar Gaddafi, the man who ruled Libya with an iron grip for 42 years, watches as his world collapses. Satellites track the convoy's desperate flight. A phone call is intercepted. In a control room thousands of miles away, near Las Vegas, an American drone operator receives coordinates. The Predator fires. Moments later, French Mirage jets follow, raining destruction from above. The convoy splinters. Vehicles explode. Loyalist fighters die by the dozens. From a young revolutionary who seized power in a bloodless coup to a dictator toppled by his own people, this is the story of Muammar Gaddafi's dramatic rise and a disgraceful end. To understand him, let's start from his childhood. Muammar Gaddafi was born around 1942 near the town of Sirte, into a poor desert family. His father herded goats and camels. Even though they were nomads, his family believed in education. Gaddafi walked many miles to school and often slept in a mosque during the week. Richer students bullied him, but he found hope in the speeches of Egypt's president, Gamal Abdel Nasser. One of his Egyptian teachers supported his political views and advised him that any revolution would need the backing of the army. In 1964, Gaddafi and his friends created the Free Officers Movement, a secret group inspired by Nasser. On September 1st, 1969, while King Idris was out of the country for medical treatment, Gaddafi and his group took their chance, taking over airports, radio stations and army bases in Tripoli and Benghazi with almost no resistance. They removed the king and declared the Libyan Arab Republic. Gaddafi called it a revolution and promised freedom, socialism, and unity. But things started to change. Gaddafi quickly took full control. He gave big speeches and lived in luxury, while many Libyans remained poor. He used Libya's oil money to build roads, hospitals, and schools. He promised free education, free healthcare, and cheap housing. But behind all of this, he crushed political opposition, either imprisoned or eliminated people who disagreed, and built a spy network that kept Libyans afraid to speak openly. People lost their lives in a public display as a warning. Many Libyans suffered in silence. He liked being seen as a revolutionary thinker. But over time, his behaviour became increasingly strange, pitching tent on Trump's property and giving bizarre speeches. World leaders began to see him more as a joke than a serious figure. By 2011, the world had turned against him. Once welcomed by leaders like Nelson Mandela and honoured in Europe, Gaddafi had become a strange and isolated figure. The people rose up, demanding freedom, and his government began to collapse. As protests broke out across Libya, Gaddafi appeared on state TV for the second time in 2 days. "Damn those who try to stir unrest in Arab countries," said Gaddafi. "I am a Bedouin warrior who brought glory to Libya and will die a martyr," he said. Wearing brown robes and a turban, the 65-year-old Libyan leader asked his supporters to take back the streets of the country from protester. The man who had taken power in 1969 at just 27, by removing King Idris without a fight, couldn't believe his people had turned against him. In August 2011, Libya's capital, Tripoli, fell to rebel forces. Gaddafi fled to Sirte, his hometown. For weeks he moved between safe houses, growing increasingly delusional. Mansour Dao, his security chief, would later recall how Gaddafi complained about lacking electricity and water, refusing to acknowledge the reality of his collapsing regime. Gaddafi rejected multiple opportunities to flee the country. Some say he believed God would save him. Others think he simply couldn't imagine Libya without him in charge. "This is my country, my people love me," Gaddafi had reportedly said, but as NATO airstrikes pounded loyalist positions and rebel forces encircled Sirte, even the most devoted followers began to doubt. He simply couldn't imagine a Libya without himself at its centre. On the morning of October 20th, 2011, Gaddafi and his close group tried to flee in a convoy of 75 vehicles. NATO tracked the convoy using a phone call and launched an airstrike. A US drone fired the first missile, and and French jets attacked after. Many cars were destroyed, and dozens of loyal fighters were lost their lives. Gaddafi, his face a mask of disbelief, was forced to run for his life. Gaddafi's car was hit. His son Mutassim and some guards ran to hide in a house, which was later shelled. And soon thereafter, Gaddafi tried to escape through 2 drainage pipes underneath a major road nearby. That is where the Misrata militias caught them. One of Gaddafi's guards threw a grenade at rebel fighters above, but it bounced off a wall and exploded near them. The blast killed the guard and Gaddafi's defense chief. The world is closing in. Time was running out. Gaddafi was hurt in his leg and back, but what's coming his way is beyond anything he could imagine. Behind the chaotic scenes in Sirte, a complex geopolitical chess match had been unfolding for months. NATO's intervention, ostensibly to protect civilians under UN Resolution 1973, had effectively become a regime change operation. American strategy was described by one anonymous official as leading from behind, allowing European allies to take the public role while providing critical intelligence and strike capabilities. The NATO bombing of Gaddafi's convoy was no accident of timing. American Predator drones had been tracking suspected Gaddafi movements for weeks. When the satellite phone intercept came through, confirmation arrived within minutes. The geopolitical aftershocks begin immediately. Hillary Clinton, then US Secretary of State, laughs in an unguarded moment. "We came. We saw. He died." The casual brutality of international politics laid bare in 6 words. But even these words feel kind compared to how he met his end. Above the drainage pipes, fighters from Misrata were searching. Determined to act harshly, their city had suffered badly under Gaddafi's forces. It was bombed for 2 months. Hospitals were hit, and food and water were cut off. Over 1,000 civilians died. The fighters remembered everything. Gaddafi slowly came out of the pipe. He looked confused and hurt. The rebels shouted his name in shock. They had finally found the man they'd been chasing for months. One fighter said he asked Gaddafi about what happened in Misrata. Gaddafi denied everything and begged, "Don't kill me, my sons." The same man who once threatened to attack protesters street by street was now asking for mercy. What happened next is still unclear. Video showed Gaddafi alive at first, then being beaten. By the time ambulance reached Gaddafi, was lifeless. Some reports say he was caught in crossfire. Others say he was badly hurt by his own guard's grenade. Some even say members of his own group turned on him. No matter which story is true, one thing is certain. Gaddafi was gone. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't new to being cruel when he was running the show. Gaddafi's rule was violent. In 1996, about 1,200 prisoners were killed in one day after a prison riot. Their families were among the first to protest against him in 2011. He also backed terrorism, including the 1988 Lockerbie bombing that killed 270 people. For ordinary Libyans, the moment is complicated. Some travel hundreds of kilometres just to see the body, displayed in an industrial freezer in Misrata. They need to confirm with their own eyes the dictator is really dead. The final indignity for a man who had inflicted so many. It wasn't the end of cruelty. It was the beginning of something bad. Gaddafi once said, "After me, the flood." Sadly, that warning came true. For Libya, Gaddafi's death wasn't the end. It was the start of a new nightmare.